Welcome to my virtual campfire. This is season 4, and I have named this season Contact. Today, I sat down with MD Selig and talked about his new book, Hush. MD is a decorated Marine jet attack pilot, Netflix Showtime filmmaker, and author of the international best-selling psychological thriller Hush. Selig, through combat missions in Desert Storm, earned 5 air medals, and later wrote and directed projects on Netflix and Amazon Prime. His new novel, Hush, blends real-world ops insight with pulse-pounding fiction to explore alien manipulation, deep state deception, and mind control, and why so many impossible events manage to hide in plain sight. This conversation was absolutely phenomenal. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed talking to MD, and I'll see you on the other side. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to have a chat with me.
It's my honor.
I've named this season Contact. I know that I've made contact. I know like disclosure is a process, and it's like this slow process that the government's doing, rolling it out. And I feel like in 2026, we're going to be accelerated in that process. But I want to talk about contact. Tell me a little bit about what went into writing the book. And I know you labeled it fiction, but I don't feel like it's fiction. So maybe a little insight into that.
Sure. So I came out of the University of Arkansas with a history degree and went right into flight training for the Marines, which is basically Navy flight training, so Pensacola, Florida. And then I was selected for jet training. Subsequently, the squadron that I was assigned to for A-6 Intruders, which is an all-weather attack jet, we were sent from North Carolina. It was a Marine squadron, obviously, over to the Persian Gulf. So we were one of the last squadrons to arrive for Operation Desert Storm before it began in January of 2011. I'm sorry, of 1991. I'm thinking January 11th, 1991 is when the conflict, I think, officially kicked off. You have to look at that exact date, but basically the beginning of January is when it all kicked off. And that was just an air war. So I flew combat missions every night of that war and was also the intelligence officer for the squadron, meaning I'm reading all the top secret traffic. So I was flying missions, supposedly for weapons of mass destruction, which wasn't what my missions were really about. And then I'm reading the top secret traffic that's coming through worldwide, and that's not about weapons of mass destruction. But the CNN TV and the officers' mess, every time I went to eat, was talking about how we were saving the world from weapons of mass destruction. So that was the first thing in 1991 where I had a sense like there's just some shadowy wrong that is turning the wheels here. This doesn't feel like any government. It just felt like it was above, like a bigger mechanism that was turning the wheels, or a more powerful mechanism, and it had nothing to do with the American government or the British government or any of the governments. It just felt, I don't know, sinister. But I had missions to do, and I was, a military pilot, so I was just trying to do that and survive. And I did, but that kind of kicked off for me. Certainly some questions were around the confusion, like, okay, I'm the type of person that has to pull the curtain back because I really need to see what the truth is. Otherwise I can't be settled, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So after one tour as a pilot, I got out and went into writing screenplays in LA because I knew I was going to go into film and music. I had always been a storyteller, like, just written my own stuff in college and stuff, and I had played music. So I knew I was going to do some kind of storytelling through either film or music. And I began writing screenplays, producing shows in LA. So I subsequently had Southern Justice on Netflix and Showtime. And then currently there is The Gunrunner Billy Kane, which is a sci-fi pilot on Amazon Prime. You can watch that today. But all of the screenwriting led to other companies hiring me to write screenplays. So that's kind of what I did to kind of get by. And in writing and researching those stories in between writing gigs, which can be far and few in between, depending on when they come, and you never know. I basically started researching covert events because I just had a sense like something is not, there's just a big lie happening. And I've got to at least attack it a little bit and see what I can figure out.
So was it just your intuition, or was it did you see certain things that kind of triggered it, or a combination of both?
Well, I mean, obviously, what I told you about the three different antenna that I had, I'm flying combat missions that had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction. And the secure traffic was saying nothing about possible nukes. But CNN and the worldwide press was saying, oh, they're over there because of weapons of mass destruction. So that was my first, and at the time I was just confused because I'm like, man, none of this is adding up. The American government is not directing this war. This is not NATO. This is not the British government. The Nothing was adding up. And what I can tell you now, you know, post writing Hush, because Hush is basically your covert history from about 1944, all the covert events, including Roswell, and how we basically came into contact with ET races and started signing contracts, how we started getting ET technology to reverse engineer, and how that led to this cabal that runs everything, controlling all those, and our space force being created, our secret space force. We've been in space for decades. So that's a big,
Mhm.
wide picture of what's been going on. But to uncover all of that, it was just years of researching everything I could find on all the covert events that I knew for sure had occurred, but I didn't know really what had occurred. So in studying things like Roswell, very quickly it became apparent like, yes, Roswell happened and it wasn't a weather balloon. And so what the hell? Let's figure this out. So Hush goes into the details of all those covert events, even prior to Roswell. And my goal was to not only and the reason I write it as fiction is because I'm a storyteller. And I've learned that if the story is really fun and fast, even if it's dark, people will read it because this story is compelling. If they then want to look behind it and look at any event that I've written about, they're going to find the details are very close to all of the available materials that say this is where that person was standing when Eisenhower came off on the tarmac. Like it's I get so insane on my research that I kind of have to pull in every interview and every book that of any person who was with Eisenhower, an aide, or anyone who talked to him, anyone who knew about him. I look at his speeches, everything I can find on any given character before I can even write the scene. So I think you'll enjoy reading the story or getting the audible. But my point is that over time, as you know, getting into the alien space, the more you began to research and look around at what everyone says isn't really out there, you start to realize, oh, not only is it out there, it's out there in a very complex way, and it's been here before we got here. So
Mhm.
that's how Hush came about.
I started in live TV news broadcast, and when 9/11 happened, I'm not going to say I went to war or anything, but in the newsroom, it felt like we were at war. And we were reporting things, and the way the AP Wire was spitting information out, I just happened to be sitting next to where the AP Wire printer was in the booth. And so as we're live on 9/11, the information is printing out like right next to me, and I'm picking it up, and it's changing like
Oh,
every
you and I need to
minute.
talk because this is
It
coming out in volume two.
it was changing, and I even have goosebumps when I think about it. And I was like, at the time, I had worked in live news for 7 years, and I had I'd gone through WTO riots, I'd gone through all sorts of things that were live TV. Nothing like this. I'd never seen the AP Wire say something and then redact it within the next sheet printing out. And so as a producer, I'm trying to tell the on air what to say. And what do you tell them to say when the information is constantly changing? And then this is what really got me was, the AP wires printing out. We're talking to them in their IFBs. We don't even have time to get it onto the teleprompter. It's just like this flow of information is happening. And then master control tells us, and I was in Seattle. We were broadcasting from Seattle at the time. And the master control says on the loudspeaker in the studio and the booth, we're not on air. And we were like, what? And he said, our plug got pulled, basically. So we then start tuning in to the feed that's going to the entire country, and it's out of one place. There's no local networks able to broadcast live, which to me,
Where was it
that's
out
a
of?
problem. Like if news were a real thing and freedom of speech was a real thing, then everyone would be able to be saying what's happening
Of
in
course.
their perspective. Do you see what I'm
What,
saying?
yeah. Did they tell you where it was out of? Where was the feed
Yes, it
coming
was out
from?
of New York. And it was the only feed that the entire country was seeing. And I've talked to other newscasters in other districts. Like one of my friends was a anchor in Columbus, Ohio. And when I told her what I witnessed, she said the exact same thing happened to her station. And then I talked to other people in other parts of Washington. And, now I've talked to other people in like probably the whole country. But what really got me was that they were not allowing information to flow.
The visuals that you were getting of the jets hitting the Trade Center, were you also getting their visuals? Were
Yep.
they were feeding you? So in other words, you couldn't verify that the visuals you were getting. Oh, very
And
interesting.
I'm going to tell you something even more strange. So I
Wow.
saved those printouts because I was like, there's something going on here. Like,
You and
this
I
is
need to
not
talk off air.
this, this is not normal, right? So
Hmm.
I saved them and I had them on my desk, not in the booth, like in the newsroom. I had a desk with my chair and everything, and I had personal things on my desk. I had those saved on my desk. I had other things. And about 2 weeks after 9/11, I got to work and my desk was cleared off, like even my personal items. And I
Yeah.
was like, what? And I
Yeah.
started asking everyone around, like, are you missing things on your desk? Everyone was missing things on their desk and no one knew like what was
Wow.
going on. And I finally go into master control because master control is there 24 hours a day. Like, other people come and go from the station, but they're there 24 hours a day. Like, they can't leave their station. And I'm like, Lupe, what's going on? There's things missing in the station. I saved some things and I didn't want to say what it was because at the time I had some suspicions, but I also didn't
Good for you.
really
That's
feel
great.
comfortable
Yeah, of course.
stating what I was thinking. Does
That's
that,
awesome.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I love
It,
that. Keep
it
rolling.
was, it was
I got
touchy,
it.
you know?
I'm with you.
And
Yeah. You're
so Lupe was like, he goes, the weirdest thing happened last night. I'm like, what? And he's like, these guys came in and this is another thing that's strange is a TV station is secure. Like, you need a badge to clip in, and even when you clip in, there's a security guard there 24 hours a day. So you can't just walk into a TV station. Like, it's not possible. And Lupe says that these guys came into master control. And I'm thinking, how do some random people just come into master control? You have to get past the security. So, in his
good,
perspective, this
Krystal.
is what he told me.
Good. Good.
He said, these guys came into master control and they were wearing all black, and they came and they took all of our um, uh, air checks, is what we call them, all the air checks from the last week or last 2 weeks, which would have been inclusive of 9/11. And I was like, that's illegal. Like, that's the station's personal property, and it's actually the FCC. It's not even their property. This is like the station that I was working for was Q13, and it's their property. No one's supposed to be able to take those. And he goes, I didn't know what to do. Like, I'm sitting here in a station with no one else, like basically the security guards downstairs, and Lupe's in master control. And he's like, I couldn't stop them. Like, they took things. He goes, so maybe they took the things off your desk too. And I'm like thinking, what the actual F is going on here?
Yeah.
And about 4 months later, I was so convinced that the news was just a propaganda machine that I thought I was doing what I like kind of my soul mission. And I realized, like, this is not I'm not here to spread disinformation. I thought I was here because I thought news was like this freedom of speech, this, like kind of service to our country in a way. That's how I thought of it. And it broke down all the
Yeah.
things I had in my head,
Of course. Yeah. Because
and
it's like you're trying to be a really good American patriot, deliver truth, give the American people what you would want. And suddenly you're realizing my own government is pulling the wool over everyone's eyes, and they're trying to pull it over mine. But you had that intuition of something is evil here. Something's not right. And you were on track. And I'll tell you,
could not,
you're
in my
on it.
heart, do my job anymore.
There you go.
I remember I told my director, I said, I had my badge in my hand, and I said, I'm done. And he goes,
That is amazing.
Krystal,
That your story. This is the I tell. So Lincoln's my best friend here, but he's also my assistant who runs the publishing company, and he sets up all these podcasts. And
yeah.
I've been discussing this with him because this is coming out in volume 2, because I'm covering 9/11 in volume 2. But I will promise you that the lead calling the shots, and I'll say it now before anything else happens, was Donald Rumsfeld. And you'll find that the entire cabinet, everybody was involved. But Donald Rumsfeld was literally calling the shots. And if you want to look at something interesting, which will infuriate you, Krystal, it just so happens 20 hours before he directed all of the attacks, he gives a speech at the Pentagon called Bureaucracy to Battlefield. Because when you know you're about to direct 9/11, then you also think, well, why don't I just fire everybody up by saying we don't have any power to do anything against all these possible silent, mysterious attackers who could attack our country. People are not aware of it. We should really be more prepared for possible attacks from anywhere. The speech, I'm just saying, watch his speech at the Pentagon 20 hours before. You get to watch the dark pot beginning to boil, and he knows all of it is planned in advance, for years in advance. He knows exactly what's going to happen. Starting 20 hours later, he will be directing all of it. When you watch that speech, it changes the way you watch the speech.
Well, so I remember when we were live for and time is a weird thing. We were live for maybe 30 minutes, maybe a little longer. I can't quite say.
But you were Seattle time, so essentially
yes.
at 8 a.m. when, let's just say roughly 8 a.m. when the first jets are coming in.
Yep. It was
you
6.
Are
oh no,
right.
It was
6 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
No, it was 5 a.m. We
Or
were
5 a.m.
3
Yeah, 5
hours.
a.m. You're 3 hours, right? So
And
you were at
our
5 a.m.
yep, and our show was supposed to start at 6.
Hmm.
But I remember sitting in the booth and seeing the oh, and this is another weird thing. This is very strange. When I'm sitting in the booth and we're getting ready, pre-producing the morning show, and I look up and the live feed coming in from New York was zoomed in on the Twin Towers, which was like not a pretty shot. And usually, like when we would open with like a shot of New York, a shot of Chicago, a shot of LA, like kind of showing people what's going on in the country.
Yeah.
And I look at the shot that New York is feeding us, and it's just this like zoomed in picture of the Twin Towers, really ugly shot. And
Just
so,
unreal.
like, unreal. I worked on that morning show for like 3 years. I never saw New York give us that shot. And so
This
I
is
asked
such
our
great
TD,
information. You're
like our
just
technical director, and I
you're
said, "Hey,
blowing me away.
Bill, I go, what's New York feeding us right now? Can you call them and tell them to like zoom out? Like, I don't want to see that. Like, I'm not
Oh
going to
my
throw that
God.
up on the news." And so, as he's on the line with New York, like, he's literally calling the station and saying, "Will you send me a better shot?" Basically, like, my producer doesn't like it, And like, I'm just like, I just don't like it, like, visually. I'm like, this is an ugly shot.
Right. Yeah, of
And
course.
so,
Why would you be zoomed in on the
it,
Twin Towers? No one wants to see that.
why? Why? Unless someone knew that,
Right. Right.
like, I'm
Unless it's
just
being
saying
directed. Unless it's being
that
directed
is
because you want to fire up the American public. You want them to see it firsthand. So
exactly.
if
And
you're in
as
advance
we're
of it
on the line
and
with
you
them,
control all of the media on the planet, you
yep,
can say the shot from New
or at
York, the
least
AP
certain
feed.
medias, you control the ones you can control.
Of
You know what I'm
course.
saying? And we see the plane go into the the building as he's on the phone with New York.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
go, "Bill, I don't think they have, I don't think that's a live feed. I think they are looping a tape into that. Like, I thought it was a movie. I literally thought it was a movie."
Oh, that's interesting.
And
Wow.
he's sitting there tapping, like a TD does. Like, they're tapping, tapping, tapping. He's
Hmm.
like checking all the coordinates, doing all this stuff. And he's on the phone with
Yeah.
them, but also trying to like figure it out. And he's like, "No,
Yeah.
Krystal, it says it's the live feed." I'm like, "Well, they're not feeding you a live feed. That can't be a camera." And then all of a sudden, the people in New York just hang up. And he goes, "Well, that's weird." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "They hung up on me." And I'm like, wait, wait, wait. What the actual F is going on? And so our hosts of the show, like our anchors, had literally just gotten there. And when you work on a morning show, you roll in your pajamas. Like, you're not
Yeah.
like looking
Yeah.
ready for the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And the the male host and the female host had like totally different personalities, and the our male host was like, "Oh, I'll just go live. I'll just get on there." Like, and we're like, "Okay," because he is like was the type of person that could not read a teleprompter, and like in live TV he was the worst. And so we're like, "Oh god." Like, he's going to go live and Christine's not ready cuz she didn't have makeup on. And so
Hmm.
she's like sitting there trying to get her makeup on, and he's going live. And we're just like, as a crew, we're like, "Oh, this is a train wreck." Like,
Yeah.
what's going to happen
Right.
here?
Right.
And yeah, so we went live unexpectedly. Like, we're supposed to start at 6 a.m., we go live at 5 a.m. So
Wow.
it was just a whole like hot mess.
AP feed then come back
Yep,
with a
we
little bit
were
wider
we were
shot.
live when the second plane hit. And we were reporting what the AP was telling us, but like I
When
said,
the
the AP
second
kept
plane
changing.
hit, do you remember if it was an airliner or if it was a gray, more tanker looking, still an airliner shape, but was it gray or did it have the standard white with some color striping like the first plane did? Do you remember?
I'm gonna say I don't remember those
Hmm.
details.
Hmm.
Like, I try to think about it, and I just don't remember, because I
But
do
your story
remember that.
is so compelling that I mean, and again, it just aligns up with all the things that are coming into my research right now about 9/11. The
Yeah.
buildings were set up by some teams on the inside with plastic explosives that were not plastic explosives, but tiny nuclear detonations that were fiber optically connected so that they would
Yep. I
basically
will
bring the building
say,
down. Yeah.
when the buildings collapsed, I
Yeah.
remember we weren't live anymore, but we were still in the booth watching. We were
Hmm.
watching this like
Right.
now the rest of America, and I remember when the buildings went down, and each floor did this like thing, and
Yeah.
I was like, all of us in the booth were like, that isn't normal. Like it looked like each floor blew up, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. Like it
Yeah. It
was
was.
like that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and we
It's
all
it's a
sat.
massive, yeah, it's a massive decompression where the charges have been set off on fiber optic cables where they're all going off all in a millisecond. But
Hmm.
what's wild is even folks on the ground, some of the firefighters that are still, those videos are still a lot available online on YouTube. The firefighter is looking up. He's like, I was standing here, and then I just hear this pop, 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 and then all of a sudden the building comes down, which
Hmm.
is indicative of many charges going off that were laid on all of the steel structures within both World Trade Centers and also in Building 7 that eventually comes down hours later with the same types
Hmm.
of rat-a-tat-tat sound just before it collapses. And the fascinating thing is all the New York firefighters, even if you get the audio book, The Last Plane in the Sky, which is just people giving their individual one sentence things like, I was a firefighter, in New York, and we were there, and we knew that no high rise ever in the history of the planet had ever come down from a fire. So we were going up because we knew we could put the fire out, we'd be fine. But the building
Yeah.
isn't going to fall. It's not from a fire. It's not going to fall. No,
Hmm.
no, no high rises ever fall. So then you start to realize just all of the things coming together of the pre-planning and all of the stuff. But I'll tell you, after you have given me information where I'm like, oh, I tell Lincoln that this committee you were asking me about, have I had any, kind of extraterrestrial experiences? When I was writing Hush One, I told Lincoln, like, bro, I've written a million screenplays. I've never had a story directed to me. But I'm telling you, I'm writing as fast as I can write, and this stuff that's coming to me now that is coming through, like this. This is when I
Hmm.
talk about the committee at work. Why am I on a podcast with you discussing this thing where I had a little bit of a missing link about certain things that I needed confirmation, and you just arrived today, and Krystal, your stuff is so gold. You'll probably be a character. I mean, because what you
Yeah.
just said, I mean, not only is it obviously clearly the truth, but your intuitions, everything that occurred with you, the AP plug pull, the AP feed, is just more confirmation that it was a directed attack from inside.
It was.
And so, as tragic as it is, Hush One will kind of give you an idea of how these folks get to the level of power and control of the planet, and how for them, killing 5,000 or 10,000 people on a given day, for them, they tell themselves, well, but we're saving a million by not being attacked by other people, or that we.
Mm.
But what it really was about was going to get alien traded technologies that were in Iraq, but they wanted to get into Afghanistan first. They needed a way to get over there, hence the whole buildup and the, oh my God, it's just it's a big evolution, but it's now even more clearly makes sense to me hearing your actual experience and realizing, oh, every station, it was basically like being on USSR TV.
Yeah.
You were
It,
completely controlled
it,
by the state.
It's
by a group within the state. Fascinating.
it it literally it changed the course of my entire life
Of
because
course.
I went to school for broadcast journalism. I from a young age, it was my dream to like work for National Geographic and travel the
Nice.
world and tell the news of what's going on and all
Yeah.
these things. And then I realized it's not what I thought.
Yeah.
And I also realized that I couldn't say what I thought because I actually had a couple of counterparts who worked at other stations and they were more vocal about what they like early on, about what they saw and witnessed.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm going to say they were squashed.
Yeah.
One of them ended up
Bad things happen. Yeah.
Well, one of them ended up completely unalived, like mysteriously. And I I
When
was
you say
fearful for what I
unalive, you
knew.
mean they supposedly suicided?
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's death by
In a very
suicide.
mysterious sort of way. Like,
That's
and I
that's
knew
death
these
by
people.
suicide. Yeah. A
They
lot of
were not.
they're not suicidal types. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
That's a standard what I call cabal protocol is death by suicide. And that happens to pretty much anyone. They
Yep.
don't do it as much anymore, but
But
certainly
back
in nine
then,
eleven. Yeah.
they did. And
Anybody
it.
that might be a threat to revealing what was actually happening. That
Yep.
includes Bill Cooper, who
Hmm.
before 9/11. So Bill Cooper was the um, he did private radio, but he was a it's fascinating. You can look up the documentary on Bill Cooper.
Okay.
They killed him. They killed him just after 9/11, but right before 9/11, he said because he had this private pirate radio station out of Eager, Arizona.
Okay.
And so it's William Cooper. He eventually wrote the book, which is super famous in the alien world, called Behold a Pale Horse. He was the first one to say there's a majestic 12. He's the first one. And so, but what's wild is he was so on it back then. His Reader's Digest version is he was a Navy intelligence officer on a submarine, was on a
Hmm.
conning tower at night. So the sub is traveling on the surface at night in like 1966. He's on the right side with binoculars because that's his job is to scan whenever a submarine is on surface. He's with the captain in front of him. He's off to the side as a NCO, and then there's another NCO on the opposite side. So they're all one's looking ahead and two are looking to the side and toward the rear. And Bill said, literally, this is 1966, I believe. He said, literally, I see this light coming up from below the water, and the next thing I know, there is a ship rotating that is, I don't know what he said, 5 times the size of a football field and 20 stories high, coming out of the water, rotating, going up, and I exclaim something, and the other two turn to me. By this point, it's kind of zipped up into the sky, and they turn to me, and he's like, I had I didn't believe in anything about aliens or anything else at that moment, and I just turned to them and I said, okay, okay, you're not going to believe what I just saw, but I want you both to look over here, and I mean it. And he said, I was kind of looking at my skipper like, I'm sorry I just said that, but you got to see what just happened. And then they saw it. The ship came back down and impacted the water at such a velocity. He said, we knew in that moment nothing can impact the water at that velocity without disintegrating. But it
Yeah.
clearly had, it had a gravity bubble around it, which he said the water literally parted as it went into it, but at Mach speed.
Hmm.
He's like, at that moment, uh, you know, we all kind of, dealt with that moment. But then our submarine crew, the entire crew, was held on our first Liberty came like the next day at a shore leave. No one could leave. We were corralled. We were all interviewed separately by literally sink pack fleet, And he said, we were literally told what occurred did not occur. And if you say anything about what occurred, you can die, right? Like that's what's they essentially told him, you will be dead if you say anything. So he said,
Yeah.
at that moment in my life, everything changed, kind of like your moment where he realized, okay, I'm a gung-ho American sailor, and I am now realizing our government is hiding a huge secret.
Mm-hmm.
And that set him on this quest. He eventually writes to Behold a Pale Horse, which is an amazing book. But what he reveals also is the beginnings of the Majestic 12. He does all the research that Hush has in it way back from like in
Mm-hmm.
1970. He starts saying this. By 1990, he is created this radio station, and he's been forced off the road once to where he loses a leg in the crash.
Yep.
Continues, gets out on the UFO circuit. You can watch his videos. They're incredible. Where he's just standing in front of people saying, I know you don't believe me, but I am telling you, you are surrounded by ETs. We have reverse engineered ships. He's saying all the stuff that I say now that all the people in the alien space have known for, but he was the first. So find his documentary. It's like from 2014 or something. But what's fascinating relating to your story, they kill him right after 9/11, because
Mm-hmm.
right before 9/11, he says, I'm telling you that something's about to happen. There is an attack about to happen. And this attack is coming from our government. He says it on the air. He says, these Indians, this Osama bin Laden, these entities that they're talking about, it's a farce. I am
Mm-hmm.
telling you, we are about to be attacked, and it's going to come from inside. He says that before 9/11. Right after 9/11, his famous line, and it's in the documentary, he says, isn't it amazing? Here we are, post 9/11, just a month out, and suddenly a TV reporter is able to walk in. Now, mind you, America has the top technology on the planet, and they can't find Osama bin Laden before these attacks. They can't find him. They can't locate him. But only a month after the attacks, it turns out an average TV reporter was able to walk into his tent. An American TV team was able to walk into his tent and get him celebrating on the day of the attacks.
Like, how does that
Look,
happen?
and he says it,
Yeah.
and basically they've trumped him up by that point that he's basically assassinated. And it's in I won't tell you the details, but the point is that everything that you're saying, like, your intuition was right, your gut feeling was right, your questions to the station were right, the fascinating stuff about the news feed, because obviously as I'm researching this, I don't have pieces of the puzzle. I'm like, but how did they do all the news? Because I was watching it and I believed everything, right?
Yeah.
But now
Everyone
you
did.
just gave the answer, like it's only one pipeline
It was
and New
one
York is
feed.
controlling
And
it.
it was producing exactly what they wanted to say. They
Right.
couldn't, it was, there was too much liability to have all these news stations scattered across the country saying what's popping off on the AP wire, because the AP wire is going crazy. It's like, it's saying that I literally remember we reported that the plane got shot down. And then 2 seconds later, it spits out, it was like it crashed. And then, so I remember the other producer in the room, her name was Krystal too, which was very strange. We both had the same name. And Krystal's sitting there talking in their IFB saying, no, 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 redact that, redact that. The plane crashed. The plane crashed. It said on the wire, it got shot down. Like, literally said that. And right after that is when they pulled the plug. When
Yes.
I'm pretty sure every single station across the country said that the plane got shot down. They needed to change that story really quickly and pull the plug. Like,
Wow.
they just realized the liability is too much.
At first, for me, it was always so overwhelming. But the more I'm into it, if I'm running the show, if I'm Donald Rumsfeld, all of it is just absolutely common sense. What they were doing in the moment is, if our little hijacking team that's just supposed to bring their knives out and say they're hijacking the plane. They don't have to hijack the plane. We'll control the plane with AWACS. But
Mm-hmm.
if they just say they're hijacking the plane, people on the plane had cell phones, and we know that they'll call their relatives and say, "There's guys
Yep.
up here with knives." and
Yeah.
and so on one or two of the planes, they were able to get a couple of these, what we call, pansies, kind of like Lee Harvey Oswald was a pansy, or
Mm-hmm.
patsy, as we say. I should say patsy. But what's fascinating is that there's a lot of evidence now that the AWACS were actually just controlling, they just took over the autopilots. But what's really fascinating is, even at that time, we had the early stuff of Photoshop where they could adjust stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming, because now a lot of footage is coming out from a low angle where there's a couple of firefighters there with a couple of civilian dudes. And as the plane goes over, it's clearly gray. And it's
Mm-hmm.
obviously original footage because it flies behind the building, and then they're talking to these firefighters, and then the plane comes in between the buildings and hits the far building, and it's gray. It's not
Yeah.
a civilian airliner. It's the shape of a civilian airliner. It's a 727 or whatever the
Yeah.
other jet was, 767. But it's gray. And you even hear one of the guys goes, "Oh, another airliner." He's like, "That wasn't an airliner. No, no, that was gray." And they're all yelling, "No, it was gray. That would no, what?" And they're being interviewed by someone who's running up to them. "Did you see that?" And they're like, "Was that another airliner?" And they're clearly saying it wasn't an airliner. It was gray. It was like military or something.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, so all they had to do, the AP wire coming out of New York, was just adjust 2 seconds of footage from gray to whatever colors they needed to make it appear more civilian. And now it's flight whatever that crashed into the South Tower. However, the actual jet was shot down, including Flight 77 that supposedly hits the Pentagon, is
Well,
shot down off of a surface-to-air missile well before it gets into the Washington area. That's a sub-launched hypersonic missile that hits the Pentagon, and there's tons of people who said, "We just heard a whoosh go over. We didn't see anything, and then we heard the
yeah.
explosion right next to us." I mean, there's
I
so much evidence that, oh my God,
yeah.
it's so
No,
crazy.
it you know, um
But your
there was a
stories,
long
wow,
time where I um I just had to like keep this internal. Do you know what I mean?
I bet,
Like
yeah,
I
out of
wouldn't tell
fear,
people,
right?
but I was walking around with a new vision, with like new eyes. Like I was
Welcome to
seeing
my world.
things. Totally. Like
Welcome to
and
being isolated for a long time and not be able
mhm.
to say anything because everybody will look at you like you are.
Oh, like and never did I think, and this is why I know this has to be real, because never in my logical mind would I have thought that my experience in 9/11 was in any way connected to extraterrestrials or NHI or any of that stuff. Like back then, that was not even a reality in my mind. Like it didn't occur to me that that could be something. But I did know one thing. I knew that for the foreseeable future, I needed to um, do my own research. Like, I couldn't rely on any information that was fed to me.
That was the same thing I had right after the war, right? I knew I have to do my own research because I'm being fed something that doesn't feel truthful and I can't stand it. It drives you nuts in the back of your life.
It does. And not being able to like speak your truth to people, and especially at such a fragile time in our history. Like after 9/11, people felt like so patriotic, and they were doing these concerts where they're raising money for this fight and all this stuff, and I'm thinking like, wow, like this isn't, it's not even real.
You had to be really isolated, literally up until now, before, because have you told this story to anyone before?
To Whitley Strieber on his podcast.
He's incredible.
I knew that there would be a time when this information would be welcomed and necessary. But I also knew if I wanted to have like a normal life, I couldn't,
Yeah. You didn't want a suicide.
I wasn't ready for it. Um,
Right. Right.
decided like I'm gonna stay quiet. I'm gonna stay quiet. But then when in 2020, and that's actually why I started my podcast, is when the pandemic happened, I didn't believe it for a second. I was like, this is 9/11 all over again. Like, I just, it was too, I don't know. I couldn't believe any of it. I couldn't believe any of the information being fed.
Yeah. Your intuition kicked in again to say no. Because it's weird. The more you come from your heart space, the more you realize your heart doesn't lie. It knows
Yep.
immediately if things are absolutely 100% real and true, and if it senses anything is amiss, it lets you know. And you can't walk the same path when you have a sense of a sinister thing behind what everyone is saying the truth. You can't walk the same path. You have to walk a different path, and you have to do your work for you to find your home, which is where truth is. So I'm the same way. It kind of drives me crazy. I've worked this angle for so long now, and I'm not like you. I'm not one of those people that holds information in the sense of, I didn't work at a radio station, but if you get through Hush, you'll start to realize that a lot of the stuff that's in there will be new information for you, especially if you get the audible where you hear the actual radio calls of MH370. I think that's one of the reasons the book has become an international bestseller, is because I'm very clearly letting you know, because I'm a combat pilot, that the voices of the Asian pilots go away, and right after liftoff, it becomes a CIA hijacking team, and it's clearly an American voice for the rest of the flight. You'll hear the actual radio calls on the audible, but the reason I bring MH370 into more of a historical setting is because of the alien traded technologies that are used to eventually teleport it in part of the hijacking, to move it from one area of the planet to another so that they can take it to Diego Garcia. Those videos were leaked online by a guy who knew he was involved in something really wrong. He was an Asian guy, but he eventually serves time for it. But the videos are of the teleportation of MH370. And it's on the same day, and it's by the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office. In other words, all of our intelligence services are involved in the hijacking of MH370 because of the stuff that I cover in the book of what their agenda was.
Do you think it was because of the
Yeah,
passengers?
the 20 engineers. I mean, you're aware of that, but the 20 engineers from Freescale had semiconductor technology that would have allowed China to do the same things that America does right in front of China, which is teleport a jet using plasma technology. All acquired in alien traded transactions, which the cabal wields over the planet. I mean, the technologies that you're going to see on those videos that have been out there since 2014 of the jet being teleported is literally technology the cabal has had since the 60s. So that group is that powerful, and powerful enough to say, if we want to get technology, because now what I'm realizing after all this time, I'm like, what were they doing in Iraq in 1991? What was the reason? And now I'm realizing, after they have obviously looted all of the Iraqi super old facilities, they were searching for alien traded technologies that were below the museum. But the Americans were known to have completely walked in without asking and took everything out of those. And there were teams that went in to get those alien artifacts because of the technology that is embedded in these things. What you find over time in researching these types of things is they'll go to no ends. They're below the pyramids right now. They're working on the 30-mile long ship that's in Antarctic ice right now, that's now being revealed.
Greenland.
There's 7 of them around the planet. And so but the point is, they learned early on from the first ships that crashed even in 1940 off of Saipan, when we triangulated one of these small craft with, and it's in the book.
So the earliest one that I've uh, dug up that I think started the reverse engineering was in 1933, the Majestic crash in
I mean,
Italy.
it could have been. I mean, just remember, there's been ships here on the planet for thousands of years embedded throughout the planet.
Oh yeah.
And so it may be 1933 could have been a crash that was the first one for reverse engineering. I can just tell you that even with Oppenheimer working on the ships from 1947, he was overwhelmed in the sense of, he's like, I see how it works. I have no idea how it works. I can see that it works, but I don't understand this technology. It's that millions of years advanced to where the reverse engineering of these ships has gone so slow that even now with our TR-3B, which has kind of been the workhorse going to the moon and back and to Mars and back for decades, it's a anti-gravity ship, but it's not a molecularly alive ship, what we call a living conveyance like the alien craft. It is
A conscious ship.
the Lockheed Martin and Grumman, they did good. They figured out, okay, well, we can have a nuclear powered ship that can have a gravity bubble around it, so it can do all the crazy maneuvering and Mach speeds, and it can travel between planets by bending space-time, by warping space-time. But we can't figure out this super advanced technology of how the pilots just lay the ET pilots just lay their hands in these impressions and their brainwave connected to their ship. They're working on that, but the point is that all that reverse engineering, it's still, our technology is still, I mean, it's we're clearly off world and have been for decades, but it's all very slow to reverse engineer the technologies we've been given.
Can I ask you if perhaps the missing technology is actually our DNA upgrading? Because we can't put our hands on and guide the ship because we haven't reached the level of consciousness to get there.
Great question. Yeah. So I'll tell you this. Right. So you're saying the ship won't recognize us because of our DNA. So you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. It's a
But some
little
of us, I'm not saying all of us, but some people have reached that level of of crystalline structure within our DNA that allows.
right. So that's very interesting. So I'll say yes, and I'll tell you this, that they have figured out, just like you said, that even when they take these teams, and JP is one of them, you're probably familiar with JP, who gets to go on these missions. He is a particular type of individual who has a particular type of DNA. The ship will allow him to access certain parts of the ship, whereas other individuals with him, whether they're Chinese, American, whatever services they're from, they don't get to go into that part of the ship. The ship is alive, and it will allow certain types of people, including Native Americans, Mayan heritage, to go deeper into the ship, and JP can't even go to where they get to go. So it has a lot to do with your makeup. I'm not positive that it's DNA, but as far as the ships flying, the ships are supposedly created literally with a given pilot in mind, because ET pilots can live for 650 years. So they don't have to worry about, oh, we're going to have to switch him out or anything like that, or her out. But the point is that they have been able to roughly get to the place where they realize if they get the genetic blueprint of any given ET that they've captured with the ship, and if it happens to be the pilot of the crew that is still alive, they've been able to figure out a way to somehow give it almost like a genome injection into a physical human pilot, and the ship will kind of sort of recognize them to where they can fly it. Hence the sport model flying with an actual non-ET pilot for Bob Lazar. He didn't know who was flying the ship. He just knew it was flying, and his stuff is rock solid. But Yes, I think it could be a mixture of all of that, but yes, we haven't gotten to that level of. I mean, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. The point is, because we're trading with all of these ET races now, that's just inevitable. That will happen here pretty quick. Yeah.
I think it's the reason for the slow roll, if you will, of disclosure. Like I said, I never expected that my experience working in media would have ever led to me looking into ETs. Like that wasn't that just wasn't something that I thought there would be like.
You flowed into that because you were looking at why the government was so effed up. And then that led you to alien traded technologies. And the big secret, even for 9/11, was it had nothing to do with war or oil or weapons of mass destruction. It had everything to do with how do we get access to the Baghdad Museum? How do we get below it? How are we going to get our troops there around it so that we can then have our way with what's down there, which we know is ancient alien technology that has been there forever. That's all it had to do with, and including the re-establishment of going back into Fallujah, all that. It had nothing to do with oil.
Like it was about 6 months after that I just was like, I'm done. Like I can't do this anymore. And so I decided, I didn't know what I was going to do actually. I was kind of like, I quit a job that gave me a very good living, and I was young. I was very young. Like I started working at a TV station at 18. Like it was just, it was my thing, and even all my friends and family are like, you're crazy. Why are you doing this? And I'm like, I can't. And I couldn't even tell people why. Like it didn't make any sense to anyone. Like I just was basically that crazy person that just couldn't do their job anymore. And so just to like pay bills, I went into real estate. Like my mom's neighbor was a real estate agent and I just started doing that. But my passion has always been production. Like I always was going to either do live TV or work on productions. And I'd also worked on sets of things, like I had a broad net to do production. Like I had a very big skill set. And so I would get invited to do random production things. And so in 2010, I ran into a friend of mine in downtown Chicago, and he was like, "Hey, I'm working on this documentary." And I was like, "Ooh, tell me more," because I don't want to do real estate. It's not my thing. Like I'm good at it, but like it wasn't what I'm like, documentary. I want to work on a documentary. And so he says, "Well, there's this group of energy workers and they're going to Russia and we need someone to go with them to document what they're doing." And I was like, "I'm in." Like, why not? I'll go to Russia with some random people I don't know. And so I found myself, and at this time I was like, I would say I was kind of lost because I could never tell people what I saw. I could never
Of
like,
course. Yeah,
really.
you're isolated. You're isolated. Yeah. Awful
I
feeling.
went to Russia with a Navajo wisdom keeper, with the Koji Mamos from Colombia. They're like a lineage of shaman that they're very famous. And it was a group of maybe about 20 people, and I thought I was going to document what they were doing. I didn't know they were going to open my eyes to all these things. So while I was there, I learned how to remote view.
All your multidimensional capabilities.
My main mentor was the Navajo wisdom keeper. She changed my life. Patricia Ann Davis is her name. And her teachings are phenomenal. Like it changed the way I see how the world works. And she talks about whole brain thinking and all these different ways and how our language programs us even. And that's when I realized, like, yes, like we are being programmed. And I remember she was actually the first person I told my 9/11 story to while we were in Russia. Like it was the first time where I like just opened up about it. And I feel like she kind of like took me under her wing, you know? Like she knew. She was like, you've seen the programming, you understand. And um and so when I started my podcast, she was actually my very first interview of my podcast, because I was like, I need to expose people to, like, more people need to know about her, like her teachings. And when I was in Russia, I learned about the illuminated beings, and I was put into contact with the almas, that they call them, but they're we call them Sasquatch. Uh, and I remember coming back and I was like, I'm going to do some research on the almas. Like these are like beings that I actually like had contact with when I was in Russia. And I go on Google, and again, this is in like 2010, and it says, I look up almas, and it says mythical creatures, something, I don't know, whatever it said. It was like not true. And I'm like, what? They're not mythical. Like they're there. like, like
Yeah, yeah,
what? And then
yeah.
I started deep diving. I did regression hypnosis. I did like all these things, and I realized that I've actually had contact with NHI almost my whole
That's
life.
cool. That's really cool. You start to realize that you wrote your script and that your life is preordained. Like you, on some level, wrote the whole script to to get to this moment in time. You wrote the whole.
And if I hadn't gone into that field, if I hadn't done so many things, I wouldn't have known to question.
Of course. Yeah, like it's all preordained. Like you on some level you wrote the script to say if I'm going to learn about how the multiverse works, I need to go through some experiences as a human in an avatar form to realize how easy it is to deceive and hoodwink me as a human, and so that I can then teach other humans like this can happen to you. You have to be aware of how we humans can deceive other humanity, especially if we're infiltrated with aliens, if especially if malevolent ETs want to infiltrate the top levels of kind of the folks who run the planet, then we're dealing with an ET intelligence that is creating the scam, and the scam is even more sublime. The installation is so pristine that even other ET races, when they first get here, assume that humans set this up, and they won't break the prime directive to speak with humans to say, you know, you guys are holding yourself down because they think we created it. It's only now that these very obviously super smart ET races are realizing, oh, we've been hoodwinked by the malevolent ones
Mm-hmm.
that are here. Their installation was so pristine and sublime, they made us think that humans had done this to themselves, hence we wouldn't break the prime directive to come in and try to help them, even though we could see that they were being held down. And now we're realizing this is only 3 or 4 very malevolent races like the Draco reptilians, the Greys, the Blondes, who've been fighting over control of humanity for over 240 million years before we even evolved on the planet, because they knew we were about to arrive. And when we rose into what we are now, we're unstoppable. And they wanted to control that. So it's all changing right now. They kind of they picked the wrong target.
Universal law says that Earth is a free will planet. So when the benevolent ETs come here, that's what they assume, because that's universal law. Um, what they don't understand is that there's these loopholes, and all contracts have loopholes. Like this is not like outside of the universe. You know what I mean? Like, so the main loophole that has happened on Earth is that in post World War II, um, it was supposed to be told to Earth that where we stand in our galactic family. Okay. But that is also when Hollywood started making um, shows and things about ET races and all these things. And I call it the Hollywood loophole. Is that the the malevolent ETs on Earth decided, oh yeah, we're going to tell them about where they stand in the galaxy, in the universe. But what they did is they labeled it as entertainment, and so they were able to go under the radar for a very long time, 70, 80 years of labeling this as entertainment.
Right. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Star Wars. Yeah, all of it.
Benevolent ones are like, oh yeah, they're upholding their contract. Yeah,
They're
this is.
fooled.
But then the
Yeah.
more time that these
Yeah.
ETs spend communicating with, say, people like me or you, and we're channeling things, and we actually start waking up and having conversations with these, and we're saying, no, no one on earth thinks this is real. Like, you're blowing my mind right now talking to me. Like, I'm literally think I'm writing a sci-fi novel, and I realize that the Galactic Federation is channeling through my pen. I started writing equations. I started writing things that never were in my head. Like, I didn't learn any of these things. They
Interesting.
just
That's so interesting.
popped into my
That's so
mind.
interesting.
And I'm writing all these things,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh my God, we're taught math wrong. We're taught science wrong. We're taught everything wrong. We're programmed to think like this one certain way. And everything is just going like an opposite direction than I expect.
And what's fascinating is, when you know something in your gut, like you're having happen, like at the 9/11 thing, you're making the adjustments because what you eventually want to do is you still want to report. You are here to help with the transition, and you are one that people will listen to because your stories they'll know are true. Because when you tell them, I'm just like, oh, she's just telling the flat truth, and she's still a little scared about it, and I would be too, right? Because that people suicide when they say what's true.
I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm in the correct location at the correct time, because time is a real big factor. Like in 2001, I might have been in the right location, but I couldn't speak my truth out of like fear. But now, I don't know why, but I'm not afraid anymore.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, because you're coming from love, and at the end of the day, you're unstoppable when you come from love. Because what are they going to do? Kill your avatar? You're still here. You were here before. You'll be here after, and you're only going to get bigger if they kill you, right? So now you're coming from love with the rest of us, and we're bringing it full tilt boogie. And what are they going to do? Kill a couple of us? It's out. The cat's out of the bag, and it's coming so fast now. They're on the run, and they just don't want to go after everybody because the ET races that are here, the benevolent ones, which there are thousands around us, are helping with the transition. So I think you have some protection at whatever level that will be required for you in any given moment. But mainly, I just think if you step from your big heart, just that vibrational frequency doesn't allow negative ETs. They can't even be in the same space with you. That's why they're having to physically leave the planet, because the planet is rising into this frequency of love that what she's done. Sophia is done with this, and she's like standing up like the big bear and dragging us cubs with her and going, I'm done with being controlled. I'm rising. And all of the malevolent dark energies that have controlled her and us physically have to depart the planet. So it's a really exciting moment. I think in the next 3 or 4 months, you're going to have significant things that occur on the planet. It's going to get a little rough, but it's going to be an amazing transition where everyone realizes we have now been welcomed into the galactic community.
I agree with you 1,000%. Everything that you're saying is completely aligned with what I'm seeing through my uh, you know we have two systems in our beings. We have our brain and we have our heart, and our heart radiates like 20 times more than our brain.
You got to switch them. Yeah.
Yeah, when we have that mind and heart coherence, um, that's truly what I think Patricia calls whole brain thinking. It isn't even about our brain, it's about bringing our heart and our mind together.
I would take Patricia one step further and say it's actually, if you lead with your heart and just allow the brain to decode what the heart already knows. The heart is literally your tangible connection as a fractal of the universe. You are the universe, you're a fractal of it, but it's from here. And this is even with the secret space program personnel that they're teaching in space, platoon level teachings going on in Venus right now. You can breathe on Venus. They're teaching them to fight with love. And what they're finding is when these platoon sized groups go out, literally when they face a new enemy, whether it's Draco or whoever is on a particular area that they're going to have to do normally would have to do combat with, they're finding that if the soldiers step out with this huge frequency of love that they've been working on, like at the gym, so to speak, they're finding that the other forces will literally just realize the power that's coming, and they'll set their weapons down like, okay, we're good. We're not okay. We're putting the weapons down. It's that humans are that powerful multidimensionally as we step into what we are. So I'm trying to tell what is kind of coming out, which is use this to decode what this is saying, to allow this to be your beacon of what is someone saying to me. That one doesn't feel right. That one does. He doesn't feel right. She does. She doesn't feel right. He does. From here, not don't try to start from here. And as you get away from technology and allow this orchard to open, all of this stuff that you're going through where you'll say, I feel like I'm in the right place at the right time, is this kind of saying, yeah, now we're at a place where you're stepping forward with this and you're realizing, oh, everything that's coming in, whether it's the general in the car or whatever, I not only wrote this, but now I get to hear clearly if someone's trying to deceive me or not, or if I'm in a situation where I need to depart. This is the superpower that we're all realizing we've had forever. We just haven't been accessing it. We've been using this because this is part of the mind control, that if we can get humans to just keep going out on their brain and trying to use their brain to decipher all these different codes of CNN news and fear and fear and fear, we'll keep them away from this, because this is the malevolent groups. This is what they fear. They fear we're stepping into this, and then they know, as they do now, that they're on the run because enough critical mass is occurring with humanity and the planet as she's rising, that this is where we're coming from now. And we will eventually, in the best possible way, help with conducting the universe in the future. And that's what these malevolent groups, why they're having to depart right now. So we're slowly getting the word out that if we start from here, if everybody can just adjust a little bit, spend 5 minutes a day here, then when this critical mass occurs, which is kind of right now, the malevolent, they have to depart. Having said that, Krystal, it's been amazing. I have another podcast at noon. So in 15, I'm getting my tech assistant saying 15 minutes. So I have 15 more minutes. We can hang out. So We can hang out, so we can, kind of close it out with the next 15
Yeah, yeah.
minutes.
Oh, I think we could just in a couple
Yeah.
minutes do it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just like very grateful for this conversation. Have a great day and yes, it's been such a pleasure.